Welcome to Women Behind the Words. I'm Estelle Brabe. I'm the executive director of the film festival. We've been talking about this panel for a long time. We initiated this panel several years ago, suggested by... Did you hear the first part of what I said? Okay. We did this panel several years ago. It was recommended to us to do by a board member of ours, in conjunction with a study done by Dr. Stacy Smith and the Annenberg Institute. And at that time, there was no movement. But we certainly had recognized, and there was lots of conversation in the film industry about the disparity between men and women in the roles they played. But now we have a movement. There's a label to it. And we have another movement, and there's a label to that. So there's a lot of places for this conversation to go today. We've been talking about it. We don't even know fully where it's going to go because it's up to the panelists and somewhat to you as the audience. But before we get started, I would like to thank our major sponsors, Showtime and the White Elephant, and the sponsor, yes, thank you. And our sponsor of today's event is Lifetime. And this panel very much dovetails with always what has been their mission, which has been supporting female writer-directors and showrunners and putting them on the front lines. So thank you very much to Lifetime. It's a perfect match. So this just seems like the appropriate moment to just to give a shout out to our excellence in filmmaking, to a female writer-director award called the Adrienne Shelley Excellence in Filmmaking Writing and Director Award. We will be giving that out. We'll be announcing it later in the festival. I just wanted to recognize that we have been giving this award for many, many years, and the selected writer will get $5,000. So, without further ado, I would like to bring up longtime festival friend, Ophira Eisenberg, who killed it the other night with her show Ask Me Another. We love her. Please welcome Ophira Eisenberg.
Well, thanks. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Nice to see you all. So we are here. I'm going to introduce some fabulous women that are going to join me up here. We are here to talk about a few things, basically where we are at women in the film and television industry, how the current cultural climate is affecting how we view ourselves and the people we work with in the industry, and how we can move forward with hope and empowerment. So I would love to now take a minute to introduce the people that will be joining me up here. Showrunner, writer and producer, and co-creator of Sci-Fi's The Magicians and Lifetime's You. Please welcome Sarah Gamble. This is kind of fun. It's kind of a runway walk to your chair. It's kind of excellent. I know. Known for so many starring roles, including the movies Basic Instinct, Waterworld, The Firm, Sliding Doors, and of course you know her from HBO's Big Love. She received an Emmy nomination for that, and she is in Donald Lardner's Ward's We Only Know So Much, Jean Triplehorn. Yes. I like that you took your time with that. You took your time. She is the producer and star of Egg, screening here this year. She appears in Better Things, How to Get Away with Murder. You know her in one of my favorite roles of all time in Orange is the New Black, for which she won a SAG award. She also does great work as a change maker for women, which we will be talking about. Alicia Reiner. We didn't plan this color schemes at all, as we do, but I gotta say, already fantastic. Producer of the Oscar-nominated film The Squid and the Whale, and director of You Can Choose Your Family. Please welcome Miranda Bailey. So far, reading these credits, I feel like you guys are overachievers. Let's move on. Director. This is her debut film as a documentary here at the film festival, Roll, Red Roll, and director, producer, and editor of The Line, Nancy Schwartzman. All right. Hello, ladies. Thank you so much for joining me. So, okay, so where I want to start this discussion is we all, I'm putting me in your group, it just feels good. You all, and then me here, have done a lot of very impressive things. We just went through these credits. It's fair to say that none of us benefited from a boys' club propelling us forward in our career at any time. But I would love to know, to dispel that myth or add to it, who helped you in your early career and even now as a mentor, who championed you, maybe even still who you go to for advice when you hit roadblocks? We can go down the line, of course, it's super easy, but if anyone wants just to chime in, you're more than welcome. Sarah?
Okay, do I have to do a thing to it?
I don't think so, but is it not working?
Is it working? Yeah? I'll just project. All of my bosses in television have been men, and I have been privileged to work with great men. John McNamara was my first boss, and he has been mentoring me. But we were talking backstage, and I was reminded that when I was a teenager in college doing plays kind of on our own dime, I met Jill Soloway, and they were amazing. They invited me to just pick their brain over a glass of wine, and I asked about 1,000 stupid questions about how to get into television. And later I asked them why they went so far out of their way for me.
Yeah.
And they said to stick it to Hitler. So I have tried to internalize that and pay it forward for Jill.
Do you remember, so you were a teenager and you...
I was like teenager, early 20s,
Yeah.
Going to UCLA, and just after trying to drum up work as an actor, doing writing,
Sure.
just kind of making my own way, and very lost. I mean, television doesn't look like a thing you can break into. If you don't know someone in television, then it just looks like this strange, like the obelisk thing in 2001. Like, is there a door? Is there a window? How do I
get into the box?
And Jill was having this amazing career, and later published a book that had an appendix called Brain Pickings, because it turns out so many people pick their brain. So I was, I was moved to realize just the generosity of time that really means, when probably every day they were being asked that.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Jean?
When I started out, it was nothing but men who were leading the way. At my drama school, led by men, and then back out into the world, male agents, managers, directors, all male co-stars. I was hungry the first 5 or 6 years of working to do a film with women. Female relationships. I was always the wife or the girlfriend or the lonely woman on the boat, or and then as time has passed, for various reasons where I'm sure we'll discuss later on, that you just start to lean towards the women in your life, and now I'm represented by all women. And there's just a shorthand, and it's not like I had an awful experience with the men around me necessarily, but it's comforting, and we have a shorthand, and I'm a mother, and so they understand all of that. And as far as mentors, really, I have a huge network and core group of female friends that are in the business, that aren't in the business. Those relationships are what get me through. And as far as professionally, we've been friends a long time. And I thought about this last night. One of my dearest friends is Laura Linney, and we speak honestly about the business. She's really taught me a lot about. We talk about. What roles are you doing? What roles are, how much are you getting paid? Really? Oh, well, and we talk about the business. We believe in transparency, and I know that she has spoken publicly about women that's the only way that we're going to get through to another level, if that's how you want to describe it. But to talk to each other and to be honest and share your experiences, share how much you're making, share who you're dealing with. So I think Laura is the one constant in my life.
And you were just saying, like, all these for 5 years or whatever in the beginning, you're like, why can't I? Where are other women around me? How have you felt the roles being offered to you and the kind of projects that you are dealing with has changed?
It has changed.
Dramatically.
Dramatically. It's not the same. And I'm sure we'll touch on Me Too and all of that, but yeah, it's changed a lot.
Well, that's positive.
It is. No, I wouldn't still be here. I mean, honestly, it was at a point of, I'm not enjoying this. I don't, we all have a quality of life that we want in our lives, and we want to keep this quality going, and it's just not worth it. It's, so I sort of dropped out for a while. I have a family, and I really reevaluated a lot of the issues that we're talking about. They really played into, are things getting better? Am I going forward? And then they started to get better, and I'm still here.
Okay. Okay. Alicia.
Similarly, I was thinking about this, and I never had a mentor. And I asked a lot of women, and I'll never forget, I even, Women in Film and Television has a mentorship program, and in my 20s, I put my resume in, and they came back to me and they're like, would you actually be a mentor because, you have a little bit more experience than this person? So I never had that, and it's why I am so deeply committed to mentorship now. Like, I want to be that Jill Soloway for somebody else. It's why I make movies, truly, because I want to create opportunity for women. On Egg, we hired female heads of every single department and a 70% female crew. And thank you. And I love telling stories. It's very much a story that I had never read, that no one had told, about what it is, about choices in parenthood. And it's why I'm part of Time's Up. I feel like being part of Time's Up has been the first time in my life where I feel like that feeling of mentor, of like someone's got my back. However, the other piece of that is I always had like Artist Way groups and sort of groups of where we would mentor each other, where someone wasn't way ahead of me, they were my peer, but we would champion each other. And I think it's important to bring that up, because if you can't find that person ahead of you, find your peer who will celebrate with you and keep you accountable together, which is really a big piece of it. And the last thing I really want to say is, in this moment, I don't want to say it must be hard to be a guy.
Still fine.
But because, this is so deeply important to discuss what we're discussing, but it's very, very important also to champion the men who are feminists and who do support female artists. And I will say my husband, we met when I was in school. He would have like 10 auditions to my one. And for years, he would financially support me, but emotionally support me and tell me, your time's coming, like, keep going. He so supported my dreams, and I would not be sitting here if I did not have that man in my life. And in this moment, I now bring home a little bit more bacon than he does. And he's okay with that too. And we still have great sex. And that's really important to talk about too, that the great men who are okay with women making as much or more than them and picking up the kids more, and the men who support women, because we need to talk about them too. We can't just talk about the bad, which is there too. So yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah. It's true. It is
Like 1,000 things to say now. Well, in terms of the men, it's interesting because I have a really amazing relationship with my husband. He's a stay-at-home dad. And so I would say right now in my life, he's one of the biggest supporters because he allows me to go to all the film festivals and be gone for 3 months to make a movie. And he's there taking care of the kids. And it is really great. And there are really wonderful men out there. And you don't have to do that to be a wonderful man, obviously. But I mean, you know, they exist. But in terms of like well, I think with that, you know, like this new kind of found women's movement isn't about putting men down, you know, and I think that might be getting a little bit twisted in the media and whatnot. I mean, this movement is about women lifting other women up.
Right.
And it's about, instead of creating differences, it's creating sisterhood. And I think that that's what we have to always remember because it didn't exist really until now. And in terms of mentors, I was going to say, like, I definitely did not have a mentor to the point where it was like, if you just have to be really scrappy and be able to survive and be able to be like, I don't care how many no's I get, I'm just going to make something happen. And so for me, you know, I found a man that I could, you know, partner with and to be taken seriously because, you know what I mean, which I didn't realize I was doing at the time, but I did. And then eventually our partnership, you know, outgrew itself. And I remember I was like very scared, like, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this on my own? Like, am I going to make the right choices? Because I've always had to, like, you know, have my partner agree with me. And I often did what he wanted instead of what I wanted. And I was sick of that and moved on my own. And it was great because within that moment of moving in on my own, like I was nominated and won a Spirit Award that year and then was nominated for a Spirit Award the next year. And I was like, yes, I should have left him a long time ago. So it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. And you know, there are men who, you know, act like they're going to help you, but when you get close enough, you find out they're a bit predatory. I had several experiences like that. And you just, you know, pass it off like, oh, that's just Warren Beatty, you know, oh, well, you know, or I guess he's not really going to help. But it's just, I don't know. It's now we're called to the attention of going like, yeah, that's not okay. That's not okay. And I don't have to do things. I mean, I always knew I didn't have to do things I didn't want to do.
Like what? You actually are going, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like, so I've never been someone who was like, oh, like in the Harvey Weinstein kind of situation, like, gosh, if I don't sleep with this person or let him get in a hot tub with me, I won't get a job. I always was like, yeah, no, I'll pass on that.
Sure.
Not that Harvey ever hit on me. So, I don't know, I'm too old for him probably. Your turn.
No, but actually just jumping, you know, Alicia, just because you were talking about, right, this is all about upholding and uplifting women as people working great together, because in the past, I think we were all led to believe that women working together is a nightmare, and it's competitive, and it's going to be ridiculous. And I have had the honor of interviewing a lot of women from Orange is the New Black, and I just want to ask you, because they all sort of say that there is a magical work environment on that show that is all women, and it is a absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I would say a piece of that is it was started in a very quiet way when nobody could see us, and we didn't know if anybody would ever watch this show because it was before Netflix was Netflix. Mm-hmm. And I remember being at a Broadway premiere, and a casting director, my husband was showing off and saying, Alicia got cast on this big Genji Cohen show, and Person Who Made Weeds, and on Netflix. And the casting director said, "Oh, good luck with that little web series." Oh, because no one had seen it yet. So that first year was really like making theater in a barn. It felt very private and magical, and we all connected in this very, very, very special way. As women, as a very diverse group of women, and a piece of that is also obviously Genji. Lisa Vinacore, our on-set producer, who's been our on-set producer from the very beginning, she's like our den mama. And there was a very special, fairy dust magic feeling to that.
Yeah.
I will also say on Better Things, there's that fairy dust magic feeling, because Pamela is like, she kind of is her character, and she is this mama. And she brings that mama energy to the set and to how she directs and produces and writes.
And perhaps counter to some stereotypical ideas, the mama energy brought to a set is great.
I think any female energy brought to a set is fucking awesome. Like, let's go beyond great, Women know how to multitask in a deep way. Biologically speaking, our corpus callosum works better. We're able to do that on a purely scientific level. And I think there's an emotional capacity and a beauty to that, of understanding the feeling of people on set that is unique to women.
Yeah, very good. Nancy, back to the mentor and champions. Who has championed you and mentored you?
Well, I'm the odd nonfiction doc maker on the panel, and it's definitely like a different environment. I've been so lucky with the film that's playing here, Roll Red Roll. I have 8 financiers, EPs who are women, who totally champion me. Like, I would not have made this film without 7 women saying, "Here is all of your funding. We totally believe in you. Go make this movie."
And please, as a synopsis, the movie is about revisiting the Steubenville, Ohio rape case now in the light of the Me Too movement.
Me Too, yeah, and social media, but really the movie centers men and boys. So it's kind of the first time there's a film about sexual assault that's not centered on a victim. It's really, truly about the behavior and about men and boys. And I would not have been, I love that all these women were like, we trust you, go out there, get it, get the story, get the footage, do it. But where are the male EPs? Like, why? I'm interested in talking also about silos, right? Like, we're in this moment where it's like, who decides what's a woman's story and what's a men's story? Like, my movie's true crime, and it's about football. Yeah. It's like totally designed for men, because women don't need to see my movie. It's great. I want everyone to go see it, but it's really like the change making, I think, needs to happen with a different kind of audience, like if men and boys are centered. So my EPs have been amazing, but my first boss in film, I was a fiction filmmaker, and then Christine Vachon kind of beat me so hard, but in kind of an amazing way. Christine Vachon's an amazing, brilliant producer, and she was my first boss. And she didn't like hold my hand and didn't let me pick her brain and didn't do any of that stuff. But I learned so much from her. You all know her, right? I mean, she's like such a champion for artists and for underserved stories. So I just was 22 and terrified. But I learned from her. I learned just to be fucking fearless. I mean, she was a fearless producer when she was probably one of the first women indie producers. So, if she yelled at me for not getting hot sauce with lunch or kicked the door, I was like, oh God, Christine needs hot sauce. She did need hot sauce, and I should have done better. It's fine. That's fine. Well, she made me the documentary filmmaker that I am. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's a sort of part of this too, that we were talking about, this idea of the female boss who is really hardcore is a bitch, right? That's the idea, unlikable and a bitch. If it was a guy, it would be like respectful, has lots to offer, busy, high authority, and maybe we need to start all embracing the unlikable woman as the likable. Maybe
I'm
that is.
there. I've done it.
You've done it, right?
Yeah.
So you're a showrunner. You were saying on 2 shows, you did 2 shows at the same time, and you know, as showrunner is like the highest authority. It is a job that's not often talked about, but is the highest authority on a television series. I mean, can you just tell all of us what that job entails?
A cool thing about television is that the writers are in charge often.
Yeah.
Because the story is told over such a long period of time. So a common track to become a showrunner, and being a showrunner is like 100% producer and then another 100% writer, right? Is to sort of move through the ranks of being on a writing staff and learning more and more about how to produce a show, the kind of nitty-gritty of that. And then you ideally create your own, or you help someone to create their own, and then you run it. And the job of a showrunner in TV is a little bit similar to the job of a director in feature films, just in that a lot of the job is saying yes, no, about a million times a day. And the thing that you're saying about being a bitch,
Yeah.
I just own it.
Yeah.
Because I will be fired if I don't do my job well. And to do my job well, I do have to be assertive. And I try not to be mean. I don't usually need to be mean. Because I think, and I was sort of trained, that part of being a good boss is hire amazing people and let them do what they're amazing at, and kind of just stay out of their way, and let them be brilliant. But I also was warned early that by my agent, who represents a lot of women who are showrunners, he says, you know, I hear the word crazy or bitch, difficult, about every single woman I have represented. So just expect that one or both of those will happen. So I just started calling myself a bitch. I said, I don't mean to be a bitch, but I'm about to be a bitch. You know, the world didn't explode, the show didn't crumble, nothing got shut down, we all worked together fine. I think it's just about kind of making a friendly joke about the fact that, you know, oh, okay, here's a woman in her 30s who's responsible for this.
Yeah.
And I never worked for a female showrunner. There weren't very many when I started in the business. And so I'm completely at peace with the fact that this is, in many cases, something that the people I am talking to just have to get used to. And that's neither good nor bad, and everyone is there to do their job and to do an amazing job. And so, you know.
Well, thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank you.
telling these stories, and thank you for kicking ass.
Thank you.
Jean and Alicia, both of you have played roles in your career that, you know, are great, strong female roles.
Bitches.
And some, right? Not at times not likable characters. Those are the ones I always like. Do you feel like playing these characters as an actor? I'd like to know first, as an actor, do they influence your own sense of empowerment? And also, are you aware of your female audience, how they are viewing this role that you were embodying?
You the bitchiest.
Yeah. With Fig,
Yeah.
when you're playing a bitch, you have no idea. She has no idea she's a bitch. I mean, she actually does, but usually you don't think of yourself as a bitch. And I truly believe everyone thinks they're doing the best they can. Like, I truly believe every human on the planet, including our current president, thinks they're doing the best they can. And that's part of the problem sometimes. And so with Fig, I try and think about it that way. So I just play the most I'm just playing her as she is, in reference to like Egg,
Yeah.
where I chose that one I chose, Fig, I was hired, and it was 2 lines when I started. Like it was they. So with Egg, I chose to play this character because she's complex and she says things that I think people won't necessarily like or agree with, and that's really interesting and awesome to me when a writer writes things that are not likable.
Yeah.
And I guess the truth that I'm learning as I'm saying all this is I have trouble not being likable. So these women are teaching me, just like, we all do the thing that teaches us. So these women teach me to like let go a little bit at a time of my need to be liked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I usually choose roles just based on the story as a whole first, and if the story works, and there are some jobs that I've chosen just it's a job because I am a working mom. So, but for the most part, I really try and choose the roles, and if it is a perceived bitch or somebody who's really strong-minded, it's kind of freeing because, I have, I want to be liked, and it's a curse, I think, for people, women especially, just that you want everybody to be okay, and I have to really watch on a set that I've really stopped doing this in the last 10 years, I would say, being the cheerleader. Because I realized I was spending so much energy leading and making sure everybody was okay on set, the crew. I was sort of like half AD, half actor. We all good? Okay. So I'm going to get really intense right now, okay? Everybody okay? All right. And I just don't do that anymore. And I definitely have moments of, as an actor, if I need to take my time, I do say, please be quiet. This is, I've given it up for you, and now you have to be quiet, and you have to be there for me. And I actually don't care anymore if people like that or not, because they're not on camera. They're not on screen. So, and as far as learning from roles, I usually get in the car and leave them behind. I don't really, I rarely, there are certain roles that I love. There are certain shows or films that I wish could continue. But for the most part, I shut it off and move on.
Yeah. That also sounds very healthy. Miranda, as a producer, in the light of Me Too and the current cultural situation we are in, do you find that either the things that are coming your way that you want to be putting behind, or the desire for certain kind of projects has changed?
Yeah, and it's really exciting because for many years, also as a director, I've wanted, and a writing director and an actor and performer and all of that. I'm a girl, right? So I like female stories.
Yeah.
And there were many times earlier on in the career, like there was like this, sorority story, and it was like we couldn't get it made because it was like 2 girls, there's all these times that, well, it's this story is not going to work because it's a female, or this story is not going to work because it's a minority is the lead, and so that's what is that means it's a black movie, and you're like, wait a second, no, it's not, it's just a movie, and so that was that wasn't not easy, and now it's unbelievable because I'm literally being told by like every single studio, please come in, we want a female director and we want female comedies or like female stories. And I'm like, oh, great. Okay, because I've got this book and I just bought this book. And then there's this script that I've been doing for like 7 years trying to get made. So it's like all of a sudden, there's a real need for it. And I don't know if it's because of like guilt or like enough social society pressure where everyone wants to be like, no, look, we're fair. We're 50-50 by 2020 or whatever, and I don't care how we get there as long as we respect each other and the men that are a part of the process as well.
Sure.
So there's that. I mean, one thing I will say, like, that I'm kind of trepidatious of is, the movie that I have here called You Can Choose Your Family, which plays tonight here. No, it's a father-son story. And this is, and I directed it, and I really relate to the son, and I really was able through this character to tell my dad a lot of things I wanted to say. And I never really thought, it was before, Me Too, Time's Up, it was before there was any real noise about anything. And then some people started saying like, well, why didn't you make a girls movie or like whatever? And I was thinking like, wait a second, Bad Moms is written and directed by 4 guys. Why am I suddenly questioning if I can make a movie that is about men or father-son relationship, And I think that we need to be really careful when we're talking about women and what we can do and what we should be doing, because we should really be able to do anything.
Yeah.
If a guy can be able to tell a story about women, or a white person can tell a story about minorities, or minorities can tell stories about white people, and I think, I don't know. Mm-hmm. That's it.
I feel like you are specifically reacting to that, Nancy.
Yes.
Now you are.
I just saw you nod.
Yes.
A nod in a way where you're
What?
like,
Should I repeat
you're
myself?
like, okay.
What did you just
No,
say?
it's fine.
No. No, I mean, that's a question we all tussle with, certainly as doc filmmakers, who has the right to go into which community and tell which story. And look, I'm not from Ohio. I didn't play football. I don't come from a small town.
Sure.
But actually, I have light hair. I have blue eyes. I pass in every other way. So I guess, I'm kind of going to veer a little bit in terms of like responsible storytelling or whatever, but in this age, at least for the documentary community, is talking a lot about this, like who tells whose stories. And I never considered myself someone who could like blend in the heartland and not be Jewish and not be, who I am, like a New Yorker and, all these things. But actually I was able to get in there, and I have sort of been challenged, like, do I have the right to tell that story? And I feel like, I think if you do anything with sensitivity and your heart and connection, absolutely. Yeah.
So when you were doing this particular documentary and you are dealing with people's reactions, you're dealing with men and boys and their reactions to this particular case and how it might be revisited or relooked at. Mm-hmm. Is there a great amount of resistance to a change in perspective, or are people open?
Oh no.
Well, I was just hoping.
Steubenville is like an amazing time capsule. It's sort of like as if you were to trot your grandfather out. And I have a ton of empathy for folks because they're not that much different than how my grandfather would talk about gender equity and victim blaming and all of these sort of, the generation gap is just so big now because of technology. And the film is really about teenagers and technology and like how tech is just like creating a huge gulf between what parents understand and what kids understand. So look, I had to listen to a lot of people's really awful perceptions of women and girls who have sex and boys who rape. And there was so much defending of the behavior. Yeah. So much defending of the behavior. But I was trying to get at understanding where's the pain and where's the defensiveness coming from. But it's hard to take it. As a doc filmmaker, there's no such thing as objectivity. But certainly I was just trying to really listen and understand. But also what I did, I had a lot of police footage and I have a lot of evidence. So I'm letting kids speak for themselves.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So I'm just like, here's reaction and then here's truth in their own words. Like I'm not editorializing that.
Right, you're like the story will tell itself on a certain level.
Absolutely. That's hard to do because you get so angry, you want to like throw yourself in there, whatever. But yeah, it makes for a stronger, in my opinion, stronger film.
Yeah. I was just thinking too, just in light of the current climate, I'd like anyone to chime in that wants to talk, but I know that you, Miranda, have started a film review site that is female-led.
Yeah.
And can you just say what inspired you to do that and the focus behind it?
Thank you. Well, it launches in the fall.
Okay, great.
Officially.
Great.
It's called Cherry Picks. You can go to www.cherrypicksreviews.com and sign up for the newsletter, which is happening bi-monthly until we launch in the fall. And the reason that came about was it was about a year ago. It was like in August, before Toronto, so before Time's Up, before Me Too. I had produced a movie called I Do Until I Don't, which was Lake Bell's second feature film. And, it didn't get great reviews. And it did get some good reviews, and then it didn't get others. But what I found particularly interesting was the way that men wrote about that movie. They didn't write about that movie. They wrote about what Lake Bell should have done differently. You know what I mean? Like, as opposed to, like, there are great reviewers that will talk about a film and break down what's good about it, what's bad about it, whatever. And then there's the kind of reviewers who are just assholes and will just like shout at everything and try and tear it down. And this was a kind of a unique thing because I realized she had. There was some, they were like angry that she made a movie that like wasn't about something political, and that it was about a woman who, you know, essentially wasn't happy in her marriage, but found happiness and decided to stay in it, and it was okay. You know what I mean? And she didn't want to have a baby, and it was okay. But it wasn't like, it was like a fun-loving, fun comedy, light. It's exactly what she wanted to make.
Yeah.
But some of the male reviewers did not want her to make that. They wanted her to stay in a certain lane, and I just thought that was kind of messed up. And at the same time, there was a movie, The Zookeepers Wife, that came out, and a lot of my girlfriends saw that and loved it. And the female reviewers really, really liked it, and the male reviewers didn't. And the movie didn't do well because now, you know, in today's way of viewing movies, we look and see, is there a tomato or a splat, and then we decide whether or not we're gonna go, right? And I think that as a filmmaker, as a distributor, as a producer, as an artist in any way, that's really hindering what we are able to go see, because I don't want to go see something with a splat. But
and
then,
we're
like,
so driven by these reviews too.
Yeah, and like, you know, why spend your money on doing that? And so I also think that like women think in a less binary way. You know, like I think like in the end, when it comes to like, you know, what's a really great, incredible movie like Moonlight, as opposed to what is like the worst movie in the world, like Ishtar, I think those, you know, those will stay probably the same.
Warren Beatty.
Like, oh my God, you're right. Sorry. I have nothing against him. I just want to be.
He's Ishtar.
Yeah, I know, you're right. You're totally right. What was I saying? Oh, but in between. So I wanted to create something where it was like those in betweens, you know, the scores that are like 46 to 60%, where you could like read about it.
Yeah.
From a women's point of view.
I just want to throw in props for Cherry Pick, because for those of you who don't know, Stacy Smith at the Annenberg Center in California does research on what kind of percentages, like, for example, only 8% of women, 8% of directors are women. And she did a study recently about reviewers, and similarly,
78% men.
yeah, it's approximately 80% male reviewers. So our culture is being decided on a 78% basis by men. That's just a truth, my friends. That's not, that's a statistic, right? So this is about leveling that playing field. And I think what I love about the women on this panel is it's not about complaining about men or the problems. It's how do we solve them? Like, you came up with that idea before you knew those statistics, and was just like, oh, I see this problem. What do we do? You know, and that's really what this moment is about. Not complaining about anything, acknowledging, accepting, and then taking action to change it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So yeah, we're going to have audience questions soon, but I would just like to ask all of us, what are some things that we can do? We need to change gatekeepers. You know, we need to promote voices. But in your own fields, obviously, we were just talking about your site that is going to add to that conversation immensely. But each of you, like, what kind of things do you think you can add to that? And what do you ask of others? Like, what's your call to action? Please, can we have more of this?
I think what you said is so important because it really is a numbers game. A lot of these problems will go away if there is a percentage that doesn't make us gasp in terms of the disparity between men and women and between white people and people of color. the stories will become more diverse. A single woman with a movie won't be judged as though she has to represent like all women on planet Earth, which is insane.
And you know,
Yeah.
I talked to some women filmmakers a couple years ago, and that was like their number one issue is that
I
they're like,
feel
I
like,
cannot
yeah.
screw up because the next woman will not get a job.
Sure, and I don't consider myself to be a very girly writer. I write a lot of fantasy and science fiction. You is, I think, the first show on Lifetime with a male lead. And
Diversity hire for Lifetime.
Penn Badgley was our diversity hire, yeah. But the production of that was the percentage skewed in favor of women. 50% of the directors, 4 out of 6 writers in the room, most of the executive producers are women on this show. And a lot of the problems just never happened. A lot of the stuff that you hear about, it just wasn't that kind of atmosphere. And so in terms of the responsibility that I feel, now that I'm in a position to hire people, for example, right? There's also a bit of a pipeline issue because this is a wonderful conversation to have, but it is a fairly fresh and a little bit worryingly trendy conversation. And it takes a while for a pool to be built up. And you don't just tell someone direct an episode of television. That's not setting them up to succeed. It's really a pipeline issue. It's about making shadowing opportunities available for people so they can see behind the curtain. It's a lot about hiring the right assistants. We have essentially an apprenticeship program on our shows where it is known that if you start as a PA, you can work your way up and end up in the writer's room. And I realized, it took me too long to realize this, I own that, but now I realize that means that those assistants really, I need to be interviewing and hiring a lot of women and people of color as assistants so that they can just get in the door. And that's something that, I don't fault any of the producers around me. They're busy. It's not a thing that you necessarily think about, but we have to think about this now. I don't think it's okay to even sit on a panel like this and kind of have this conversation and talk about anything that has been different for me as a woman if I don't use the power in that way. So, and put a lot of pressure on my friends now.
That's good.
Too.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
I mean, I would love to shadow.
I mean, honestly,
For the record.
Please be my mentor. I can't.
I'll be yours if you'll be mine.
Oh yes, I can't. Honestly, you've said that so beautifully. I can't. You basically summed it all up. It's exactly the pipeline issue and mentoring, transparency. And just keep moving. I mean, we've come so far in the last couple of years under some unfortunate circumstances that, happened that really were a call to arms, to call to our attention. So I think you said it just beautifully. And we have to just, it can't stop. We're not going to let up. And we have already so many systems in place, whether it be a helpline or a financial, with Time's Up, the financial assistance. I think it's just going to grow and grow and grow. That's my hope. But I couldn't have said it any better.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I echo that. Beautifully said. I have a couple of other thoughts, and I really want to be clear. This is in our industry, but it is in all industries. So I'm not just talking like we're over here, you're over there. This is stuff everybody in this room can do, whether you're a man or a woman. Hire more women.
And that's what Time's Up was about.
Time-
It wasn't just the entertainment business.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's hire more women, mentor more women, and men, you can mentor women too. That's how it works. And invest in more women. And when I say invest, I mean invest in women's companies if you can, but every buying decision you make on a daily basis is an investment. So when you're deciding between 2 wines, if it's a female winemaker, if you're deciding between 2 movies, go for the female filmmaker. And mentorship is a huge piece of it. And what that looks like is it can be as little as one call. Like saying yes to that one phone call, that one coffee. It's not a lifetime. It's not a lifetime sentence, and it can be as little as inviting someone who doesn't have the opportunity you have, who wasn't invited to that thing, to be your date. Like, that's one of the things that one of our actions with Time's Up is, like, bring someone who wasn't invited to the party. Bring another woman who wasn't invited to the party. And these are these pieces that are universal, not just our industry.
Yeah, like Passover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was
Chaim,
just thinking
back
that.
to Jill Zalloway.
I mean, I think one thing that we can do as women, and, I think men can do it as well, but I can only speak for myself at this moment, which is I think that we need to treat each other and all other women, whether we agree with them about art or politics, with respect. And I think if we are publicly tearing down any other woman, in a public forum, that is bad for all of us. So I think we should just, if you don't like what they're saying or the clothes that they're wearing to certain things, which I get, you can comment on those kinds of things. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, like, we have to be respectful of each other, and kind.
Yeah. Yeah. Nancy.
Well, I'm just going to wrap all that up.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I have nothing to say. No, I will say certainly kindness all around among all of us. I will say I feel okay calling out women who are fascists and supporting fascist regimes. I think women who look like us are being the mouthpiece for a really awful machine. So, and I'm not going to go and call that. It's about their behavior, not about their gender. Anyway, so I just, it's hard to look like, anyway, whatever, sorry. Anyway,
Yeah.
So yes, blah, blah, blah. Transparency is amazing and really important. And we shouldn't, I think women have been in a little bit of fear around acknowledging what we make and what we ask for and how we do our stuff. And if we can break that fear and
Men do it. They talk about
hells yeah.
how much did you make?
It's a part
Yeah.
point of pride.
I'm going to go in and ask. It's
and we're all
been going
afraid
on.
because our pots are so small and we're
wanna
all
be
fighting
light.
over
Yes,
the little
scarcity
pots.
model.
And, right. So we're in abundance because everyone on this panel is a fucking genius. And I'm like, whoa, it's like overflowing with abundance of brilliance and expertise. And so transparency, yes, and investment, yes. And this is also for women of wealth and women of means. A lot of times we're looking, where's the male part? Like, women have wealth and women can invest in other women, and like they should feel big and confident about doing that.
Yeah. Okay, we have time for a couple questions from our audience. So we're going to do this very organically. If you would like to ask a question, throw your hand up. And if you need a microphone, we'll bring one over. Right there in the back, how do you feel about projecting?
Sure. Many years ago, when women were making their way up in business and shattering the glass ceiling, there was a stereotypic woman who had done it, who wasn't too anxious about bringing women up along the ladder with her, but it was kind of a feeling like, I had to fight my way to the top, why should I help you? So does that pertain to your business and your profession, and if so, is it, I hope, the minority?
Well, I mean, it was, it was that way. And I think that's another thing about being united as opposed to divided. Because if you can keep people divided and fighting with each other and competing over each other, then there's more for someone else. You know what I mean? And we don't need to do that. It's an outdated model. We can all direct and act and have jobs and create art and go and see. I mean, did you guys see Equity? What a brilliant movie that you created, essentially, right? About a male story that we would typically see a male story, and the two women in stock market schemy kind of stuff. We've all experienced the competition, and I think now is the time for us to unite.
It's scarcity mentality, and we've been fed it. It's just a truth. There's a level of propaganda to it, and it's a cultural myth. That's based on some truth, but men do it to men all the time, and we don't talk about it. Men like fight and claw to the top and screw other men on the way up, and we don't talk about it. Why don't we talk about that?
Yeah, let's change the bro code.
So we have to change the paradigm, and part of that is shedding our past, and part of that it's like we have to have awareness about it, we have to accept it, and then we have to take action, and we have to like do a little bit of shedding of what we believed, and that's that quantum leap of how do we shed that myth that we've all been taught, that our culture has taught us for so long. And part of it is we tell new stories. Part of it is you investing your time and energy and dollars in telling these new stories and talking about these new stories. You know, this room creates that.
Very good. Yes, up front.
So first of all, thank you all so much for coming here and sharing your stories. I think that thank you all for sharing your stories. I think that anybody in this room that's listening is a gatekeeper to the wellness for all women and society and men that can seek a safer passage. There's a new term that I've been called. I run a real estate company outside of Chicago and write a blog, Randy Fifield Modern Living, and people have called me a badass. And I was like, wait, I'm a good ass. I'm not the badass. But I loved your story about the hot sauce and the woman who was a greatest mentor yelling at you about the hot sauce because it was necessary. And I think the more we tell our truth about the hot sauce or the yelling or the screaming or the painstaking ways that we've made our way up, and we share those stories with young women. A lot of millennials think that, oh, I'm going to start here and I'm going to go straight up. And when I wrote my blog post last month, what I talked about, that it's a few steps up and very linear, and then sometimes a few steps up and very linear, and then you get to the point in your career at 30 or 40 or 50 and in speaking your truth and gaining your confidence that you really start to project up. You look at it with Jane Fonda in this movie and different things. So please, you know, as you are in your positions about the transition of being an actress to a wife to a mother to going backward to feeling empowered to move forward, that the journey is different, and to keep sharing your truth, I think, is most important.
I love that you use that word for two reasons. One is when you were talking about being a bitch, I was like, you're not a bitch, you're just a badass.
Do you know, I don't love that word either.
You don't?
I don't
Okay.
mind it. And like, it's sometimes that's the right word. Sometimes I feel like women are called badasses for stuff that's not that fucking hard for us. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
like, it feels a little condescending sometimes to me. So I just think about why you're calling women badasses. This is shit we can just do, right?
Oh, yeah.
With the full plate and juggling all the stuff and with the children and with all, right? And it's like, you're such a no, I'm a woman.
Yeah.
In the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Getting the job done.
Damn.
I kind of want to like take a poll up here of something. So when I was at South by Southwest and they were doing all these interviews, and it was like, you know, how do you feel about working with a director that's a woman or whatever? And different people were talking about this. And a lot of men, or even just recently, there was like a variety women's thing, and there was an amazing male director. And I think that a lot of men have been saying, well, you know, my mother was a strong woman, so I've always gravitated towards strong women and whatever. And like, I love working with strong women. And I was thinking, like, why are we strong women? Like, and you're not a weak man. I don't, like, you know, I'm like, well, I really like working with weak men, so that's why so I just don't, and it's weird, because like, I know it is a term of respect, being called a strong woman, you know, it's like, oh, this is good there, but you don't have, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be a strong woman to be a director. I've worked with, as an actor, many women who are just like, would you mind moving over there? And they're brilliant.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So,
Yeah,
not that
and-
they're not strong, but, you know, it's weird. It's a strange word. What do you think of the term strong woman? Do you like it or not like it?
I feel the same about all of it, I think. It's like, it smacks of novelty a little bit, when really what should be happening is there just should be a ton of women in all of these jobs, and then we won't have to talk so separately about it. I think panels like this are so important right now because representation and seeing and hearing what you have to say is crucial right now, because obviously there are a lot of people, men, women, boys, girls, who need to hear it. I look forward to the day when we move the needle enough that we don't have to throw all of this stuff, where if half the showrunners are women, we don't have to talk about female showrunners being badasses. If more women are acting and producing and just are touring films, we don't have to talk about it like it's that special, right? And to me, it kind of goes back to the gatekeeper issue. When there is I fantasize about the dam breaking and there just being so much diversity that people don't have time to throw words like this around because there's just so much good shit to talk about that has been produced that we want to watch and we want to discuss on its own merits.
I just want to throw something out really quickly about weak men. They're amazing, and I only work with weak men. Yeah, so good.
I think that is the note to wrap. That is the note to wrap. I have to wrap it up. I think actually, I'd like to thank all of these amazing women for joining us. Sarah, Jean, Alicia, Miranda, and Nancy.